Chapter 15 Lorndrum Outskirts. Sleep didn't come easily, nor should it have. Sai had a harder time than Meredith, who seemed to make himself sleep on command. All the same, Sai awoke slightly earlier than Meredith. The town of Lorndrum wouldn't be too far now. He sighed and looked at the already tired faces of those who stayed up the entire trip. Although he couldn't say he was much better off, he was groggy and felt like his neck hurt. He felt a looming presence he couldn't quite name. It was as if the woods themselves gave off a foreboding haunt. It was unnerving. He fought the urge to shiver and pulled out his little glass ball. Using it, he was able to look into the other carts. Some of them took the hint and fell asleep themselves. He zoomed and got a good look at Mina, sleeping soundly. He smiled and stared. After an exhale, he put away the orb. Meredith, who appeared to be sleeping, spoke. "Friend of yours?" Sai was startled. He saw that. When? "Oh, Mina is a friend, I guess. We were neighbors. Well, we lived on the same street. We both studied different things, but we still ran into each other, sometimes." Meredith took a wild guess. "Then at some point, you visited with her and found out she was going on this mission, and you volunteered to come along shortly after?" Sai blinked. "Well, I can't say that's wrong, but it's actually because she's eager to prove herself to the water temple. She needs to do it dangerous places and heal the sick. Morgan told her about this job." Meredith smirked and looked at the sky. "That's when she told you her ambition and your brain melted. Then you tagged along even though you were way out of your element. You worried about her and you followed. I can get that. Admire it even. But you must know skills like yours have uses elsewhere. Probably pays better too." Sai supposed there was a grain of truth to that. Although this wasn't a bad job, people could get seriously hurt or killed. He could and should help. Besides, he didn't want to get shown up by anyone else. He was a man too, after all. Meredith was poking fun at him, of course. "Maybe, but someone needs to do this, and I'm really worried about Mina." Meredith grinned wider. "Worried about her ending up with some other guy? Like Morgan?" Sai turned a little red and with a twitch of anger said, "You mock me." "A little. You're young, so it's not hard to mock you. But I wouldn't worry about Morgan." Sai relaxed a bit, but had to inquire more. "You wouldn't worry about Morgan?" Meredith felt his face darken as he raised his back off the cart and readied himself to stand. He observed the carts in the upcoming town. "He's not likely to make it out of this alive. You are, or at least you have a better chance than he does." Sai started looking around with him. Did he see something? He started to scry and look ahead. There's magic at work inside several homes. A being of significant power is in town as well. I can't get a good look at what. It's safe to assume it's a caster. Like a witch or hag. It's probably going to run and inform the coven we're here." Meredith was saddened to see few were on guard in the carts, even this close to Lorndrum. Was no one ready? He might not know much about magic, but it was not necessary. Odds were the town had some kind of sentry or alert telling them when someone approached. They might even attack before getting to town. Meredith got a look at who was sleeping and who wasn't at this point. He began looking through his bag and checked his equipment, strapping his swords to him and making sure he had the flexibility to move. A couple of boys chuckled at him, mistaking his caution for fear. He supposed they might have thought it silly he was stretching a bit. Meredith gripped a throwing blade and eyeballed the road up ahead. He took his hand off the blade when it became abundantly clear there was nothing ahead. Not yet. As they got closer, others started following suit. Well, at least they weren't blind. Meredith was ready and they weren't. Some probably should have gotten a little sleep earlier. Meredith looked to Sai and asked him a fair question. "There was a group that got sent earlier, right? Any idea where they might be?" Sai looked and was quiet for half a minute. "I don't see them, and the witch presence in town got all foggy. I can't tell if a witch is still there or not. There's still a lot of magic there, though. Probably traps?" Morgan's cart sped up. A couple of boys let out a whoop and beckoned the others. "All right, lads, this is it." Sai yelled after them, "No, it isn't. There's traps, guys." Meredith sighed. Well, he supposed they got a warning. This is why he's going to die. Sai pointed with outrage. "You can't just be okay with that." Meredith shrugged. "Everything dies. Sooner or later, anyway." He really was okay with that. Cy whipped the reins without the coachman's permission. Mina's on that cart. Meredith felt a sudden sense of dread. Great. Chapter 16. Silenced Lorndrum. Lorndrum wasn't exactly what one might expect from the remnants of a town which had been under attack. It looked like a simple logging town with workers harvesting lumber and treating planks. There were mostly men tending to their duties, but women and children could be seen at various points. It certainly didn't look like it was ravaged by witches. The story in itself was strange. Witches did not attack in large numbers. From the way it sounded, an entire coven had attacked. Cy furiously looked through the glass, but he was focused on Mina trying desperately to catch up to the other cart. Meredith was looking everywhere else. Magic was in use? Where were the witches? Where was the party that came before them? It's possible they could have just packed up and left, but it seemed doubtful. Possibly they camped outside the town and were waiting for the witchblades? No, there would have been signs. He didn't see any group waiting outside. I don't like this, Meredith said inwardly. Morgan's cart was stopped up ahead. He and his group were gutting out and arming themselves. Fan out. Search for signs of witches. Ask the locals what happened here and see if we can get an idea where the witches were hiding. Cy sighed with relief. They were okay. Praise be to the Mother of Eight and Asmos. Meredith looked with bewilderment at the fact some of them were spread out. Some were even going off in different directions, alone. He yanked Cy by his coat and whispered in his ear. We're most likely in danger. Discreetly sense for magic. Cy reached for his orb, then Meredith held his arm. The message was clear. Discreetly. Right, that was fine. Cy didn't need his orb anyway for detecting magic. He tried to pinpoint the magic. Well, there's illusion magic at work, but it's faint. The town is real, and the people you're seeing are definitely here. It's more like an illusion to make a mess of our spirits rather than our senses. It's like a sort of soothing spell to calm people down. Not just the people. Probably us too. That didn't sound right to Meredith, but there were signs the kid was right. Meredith was high-strung and on high alert. Others were already under the impression the threat was over or the witches were deep in the woods. They could be. It was possible, but it was also possible witches were among them. They'd best be careful. Asking the populace for help was also a mistake, he figured. None of this made sense. There should be a lot more missing or dead. Did the witches kidnap them and put them back? That would be odd, but not impossible. He supposed he should warn the others, but then again his job wasn't to ensure that all of them survived. Indeed, he was here to test out weapons. Witches just happened to be the most available target, and he'd get paid by the guild on top of his job with Darius. Still, Darius made it clear that if he found a coven of witches he'd send a report at once to proper channels. The real goal for Meredith was not to save the town or the heroes with him. The real goal was to find the coven, and to do that, well, he'd need a smaller elite group. As things were, he would have more luck by himself. At least he could give them a warning. Meredith gave a loud warning in a soft voice. Stay together. Don't split up. If you find yourself wandering alone, you're an easy target. Some listened, agreeing to common sense. Another walked out. Perhaps for you, but I am no easy target, I think they'll find. Meredith smirked, but didn't give him another warning. He needed to go to work. He didn't have time to protect the death-prone. He started observing dirt, doorknobs, and windows. To the onlookers, Meredith was the one who looked like he lacked common sense. He didn't seem to be following his own advice. He wandered around as he pleased, but at least he stayed within sight of the larger party. He quietly inspected under cabins and caught a glimpse of a rat with red eyes. Some cabins had to be raised when the river got high, so they were built on pylons, which honestly could have been more even. He supposed the wood cabins would warp to the proper shape with time. Still, he looked at the rat carefully and chucked a small throwing knife at the rat. It pinned the rat hard against the floor. He moved in, sweeping aside the sawdust collected under the house. He took the blade with the rat attached. It shrieked in pain, not just from the fact it was wounded. Veins visibly pulsed around its belly. The face and body twisted or throbbed. The red in its eyes faded, and then it died. He started to crawl out and bring the dead rat to Sai, except he didn't see Sai. He didn't see most of the group. Meredith gripped the back of his sword and scanned the area with his eyes. They were all by a tree which grew in the middle of town, one with a mask on it. He squinted and tried to approach, keeping his rat. He supposed witches could use animals to spy for them or something. There was definitely magic in the rat based on how it reacted to the blade. The adventurers were speaking with the locals, who insisted there was no witch attack. They were underpaid perhaps, but certainly not dead. Odd, thought Meredith. Another spoke to a woman who shook her head. No, we sent out for druids, but they didn't find anything under closer inspection. At first they thought it could be witches, but it seemed there was a misunderstanding with the Fae. Everything's fine now. Meredith hurried towards them and noticed something else. Everyone was really relaxed, especially the adventurers. Where was the other party? Why was no one worried, on guard? No, this wasn't just an experience. This was something else. The magic Sai spoke of? It might have had a relaxing or mellowing effect. Upon close inspection, he noticed a little girl. She was crying. Morgan took a knee. What's wrong? The little girl kept crying. She had a plain dress and pigtails. Based on her wet and red eyes, she had been crying a while. They took them away. They took them all away. They took my dolly and they took them away. A clue. Maybe this child saw what happened. Morgan tried to pet her head a little. There now, little one. Tell us your name and tell us what happened. The little one huffed and cried a bit more, before words were managed. Bad things. Witches and monsters. They came out of the trees. Then they just... The little one went back to crying long enough for Meredith to approach. He observed the surroundings while they questioned the girl. Meredith preferred they focus on the girl while he took a look around. They could handle questioning a little girl. Most could, after all. Even Sai was listening intently. Meredith wondered something else. Where had those couple of sellswords wandered off to? They were gone. He turned corners and there were no signs of those who ventured alone. His eyes went up and eyebrows went down. Something stinks, he muttered. The little girl continued letting out little whimpers in between her words. My name is Abigail. Things grabbed my parents and now I'm all by myself. I'm scared. They took my dolly too. I want my family, but there are the woods. I can't find my dolly. I can't trust anybody. They lie and lie. Morgan gave her a little hug. It's okay. Where is your dolly? We'll start with that. Do you remember where you left it? She wiped her tears and slowly looked over to a cabin in between a number of others. I can't find my dolly. It's in my house and I'm scared to go back where Mommy was dragged out to the wood. She went back to crying again. Mina summoned water from the ground and washed the little one's face. I'll stay with her. Look into the house. It's okay, little one. My name is Mina Varn. Mina Varn, Abigail repeated curiously. Morgan walked over to the house. A couple of allies followed at his side. They put their weapons away and reached for the doorknob. Morgan turned it, and before he tugged, Meredith came running from a distance. Don't open that door! Morgan was puzzled. He paused, seemingly coming to his senses for just a moment. Drag marks. Yeah, there were drag marks. Just like the girl said, they dragged her parents away. A family was dragged away. We're investigating. He opened the door just in time for Meredith to shout, They were dragged in, you fool! Morgan was grabbed by a dark force and pulled into the house along with the others at the doorstep. Men went to attention. Many were ready now, and one of them pulled out a pair of daggers and plunged them into the dark. The dagger user was more prepared than Meredith gave him credit for. Those were cold iron daggers. The only reason he knew at a distance was the audible hiss and smoke created from when they touched the strange magic beyond the door. Whatever was inside the house howled with rage. Fear and panic overtook all of them, and Mina snatched up the small child in case they needed to run. Then an oversized bird began flying overhead, spying on them. Meredith assumed the witches were using that beast to watch what happened next and draw attention away from the now opening door. Out of the darkness rushed an oversized bear made of some strange magic. It was as if shifting shadow now took physical form. It was almost amorphous how it came through such a small opening. It was quite large. Morgan was bitten and scratched and thrown hard against the floor. The shadowed beast stepped out and crushed Morgan's leg. The bear would deal with Morgan later. Meredith noted it did not kill him. That thing could think. He was focusing on the obvious threats first rather than just killing out of hunger. The rogue flipped away and readied another pair of daggers. They looked to be different than the ones he used earlier. Silver, perhaps. The beast charged out towards the party of adventurers, and the panic they felt grew to a maddening level. It was not natural. It was some type of fear magic combined with all too understandable fear of death. Sai launched a small volley of 3 arcane darts towards the beast, which did little to even slow it down. Although his attack gave others courage, sword, axe, lance, and bows were out and knocked. The beast thrashed and swiped right through the middle of the large group. The bear went at Sai, who barely managed to dodge with a roll. The beast killed an axe user by tackling him into the floor and crushing his chest with unbelievable force. Lances were thrust into the beast, and it quickly wiped its paw around, breaking the wood or swatting the iron lances away. The axe users got too close, and it was quick to bite at their throats. There was no sense in healing them. A ripped throat was the end. Arrows seemed to do little, though they did make the beast angry. Then at last 3 black blades went flying into the monster's ribs and back. That made the beast cry out with agony. The beast's shape began to wildly warp. It twisted and oozed out a strange black liquid. It was a grotesque pus-like substance. The monster of a bear charged towards Sai once again. The black blade slowed it, but not completely. It would have its kill before this was over. Sai launched another set of arcane bolts at the monster, but aimed for its eyes. The monster turned its head and batted against the bolts. Not enough to stop it, of course. It did interfere with its balance and sight enough to give Sai another chance to nimbly dodge. A silver blade flew into the bear's leg, making it lose speed and balance. Sai was able to dodge with the aid. It slid to a stop and was finished off by Meredith, who hacked it in the head with a pair of neat twin black blades. The beast fell and now spread out into a purple and black ooze and misted the area with an unpleasant to breathe substance. Those who were close began to cough and tears filled their eyes. The purple mist left behind by the carcass was certainly not healthy. Meredith was lucky. The mist seemed to not go anywhere near those swords he held. This was fortunate because Sai was near enough to benefit as well. It was now abundantly clear to Meredith it was after him, trying to kill the one who could detect magic first. Smart. As Meredith guessed earlier, they seemed to be going after Sai. He seemed to realize that he was in more danger than most. Those who breathed the mist were blinded and coughing. Their vision was blurred and it was very hard to breathe. But they lived, at least for now. Meredith was surprised as he fetched his black blades from the puddle. He saw several cold iron daggers and a silver blade in the puddle. One of them was equipped for the job. One who wore a cloak had stepped back in time not to get killed by the beast. Another useful one? That rogue from earlier. "You're good," the rogue said, and approached and pulled a body away from the dissolving bear. "Got a name? Don't tell me your full one. Witches can use them if they hear it. Using an alias is fine with you, yes?" Meredith nodded. "Laredo. That should do. You?" The rogue sheathed his iron daggers. "Kenson. Are you with the Witchblades?" That was an odd question. No. Should I be? They weren't supposed to be here yet. Kenson, the rogue, carried himself differently than most. He had the aura of someone who did this for a living. He was no amateur. "I know a few of us got sent out early while the others gathered. I wondered if you might have been part of another force. Those weapons were effective. Are they some type of darkened iron?" Meredith kept his weapons sheathed in lead cases. "So you're basically a hunter operative sent here in advance. Why didn't you take command?" Kenson smirked underneath his face cover. His skin was a little darker than most. His eyes seemed almost to glow silver. "Why didn't you? The same reason, likely. You didn't want anyone to take too much notice of you. Meaning you have another mission. Something the witches have that your employers want, yes?" Well, he wasn't stupid, but he wasn't right. Meredith looked around, taking note of who was hurt. "Head count! Stay together!" Kenson motioned to the woods, then to Sai. You noticed. They were after the water priestess and the scryer there." Sai looked around frantically. "Mina! Where is Mina?" Meredith sighed that he hadn't noticed yet. "Take a closer look at that goop." Was she buried under the sludge? In the gas? No, impossible. It never got near her. "She's not here. There's no sign of her." Kenson clarified, his silver eyes fixed on the real target. "I believe he's referring to the stuffed animal. The toy bear there. It's probably stuffed with a bear's heart." Sai noticed at last. It was a stuffed animal. What they fought was a stuffed animal. No, that couldn't be. Then it dawned on him at last. It really was, wasn't it? He spoke in disbelief. It was a stuffed animal. Meredith looked to the woods. The little girl lost her dolly. Maybe we should give it back to her. He started to move out, but then found his path blocked by Kenson. Kenson had an excellent suggestion. The woman was known by the scryer, yes? With his abilities, he could guide us to where she was taken. If he has a bond with her, it would be possible for him to find her, yes? They needed Mina, but not just to save her from the witches. She could heal the injured and blinded. The witches took her by design, knowing full well the missing water priestess would effectively cripple those who did not die. Those poisoned or injured were either going to turn back or die. If they took out Sai, they would probably need to turn back. Meredith intended to hunt witches, but not blindly. Knowing where they were and what sort of traps to expect was imperative, even if it was only a slight hint. Sai agreed wholeheartedly. "Yes, I'll find her. Just give me a moment." Meredith beckoned him. "Follow me. Don't use it here." Sai took a wild guess. "What? Why? Are we being watched? They were already after me. Oh, I guess it's better not to show what type of scrying I'm using or what magic I have." It would have been better had he not said that out loud. Kenson smiled underneath his face mask of green cloth. "He learns. I can see why Laredo likes you. I'm Kenson. You are Sai, yes? Let us go. Be cautious." Meredith noticed that the bird was gone. He figured it might be some kind of spy for the witches, but had no idea how much or how little it could see.